Very happy morning, happy afternoon, happy evening based on what time you're watching this lecture. Friends, I sincerely pray and hope that you guys are doing very well with your health and staying very happy. Friends, now let us focus on your amendment in GST which are relevant for your December 2021 exams. One need that you have to understand that all the amendments in sections or rules or notifications which are there which are notified before this 30th of April 2021 are relevant for your December 2021 exams. Usually it is November 2021. Now this time it has been postponed due to COVID and the exams are in December 2021. So we make one thing very clear that whatever sections or rules or notifications have come into effect excuse me on before 30th of April 2021, they will be relevant for your December 2021 exams. And another thing that you have to understand that what is the coverage of these amendments. We are discussing the amendments which have been there from 1st of November 2020 to 30th of April 2021. So our focus will be on all the sections, all the rules, all the notifications, etc. which have come between this time, between 1st of November 2020 till 30th of April 2021. That will be the discussion in this particular lecture. Now another important thing, rather two important points that you have to understand. Those of you who have purchased your lectures, if you have purchased your lectures from June 2021, right, if you have purchased new lectures, if you have purchased new serial keys from June 2021, understand that already amendments are very much incorporated. You need not go through these amendments again. Now for this part, amendments are already incorporated. So whatever serial keys you have got on or after first week of June 2021, amendments are already there. Amendments are already incorporated. You need not see this specifically. Now you may ask, then what is the relevance? Those who have got serial key before June 2021 exams, before June 2021 exams, this is on or after, before June 2021, if you have got your serial keys, then yes, you have to watch these amendment lectures. You have to watch this amendment lectures. This would be very, very important for you. So make one thing very clear. We are discussing about those students who have taken our classes before June 2021. They have got the serial key. Make sure that you are watching your amendments, or even if you have watched some other faculties lectures, but you have watched some time back, maybe 4 months back or 6 months back, now you want to only focus on amendments, then this particular lecture will be very useful for you. Now friends, let us see the amendments straight away. Now amendments are given chapter wise, chapters which are there in our material study, revise and crack. So they are given chapter wise with the chapter heading so that it will be very easy for you to link it. Now the first set of amendments is there in your levy chapter where you are focusing on your schedule 2. So the first set of amendment is in your schedule 2. Schedule 2, rather section 7(1)(a) read along with schedule 2. That schedule 2 clarifies whether a transaction is supply of goods or supply of services. Now this amendment which has come in para 4 of your schedule 2 is only clarificatory nature. Now first of all, you may ask, then what is the amendment here? Then we'll discuss the scope of the amendment. Now in two places in para 4 of schedule 2, they have removed the wordings which talks about whether or not for consideration. So in para 4, what is the wordings they are talking about? They are talking about the first point is all about goods forming part of business assets are transferred or disposed of by or under the direction of a person carrying on the business so as no longer to form part of those assets. You are talking about transfer, permanent transfer or disposal of business assets. Now in this point they have removed the wordings whether or not for consideration. Even there is one more point in para 4 of schedule 2 which talks about goods held or used for business are put to private use or made available to any person for any purpose other than business purposes by or under the directions of a person carrying on the business. Here also they have removed the wordings whether or not for consideration. In schedule 2, which basically talks about whether a transaction is supply of goods or supply of services, these wordings are of no use. See, Schedule 2 cannot tell whether a transaction is supply or not. The scope of Schedule 2 is restricted to only to define whether a transaction is supply of goods or supply of services. So, when Schedule 2 talks about whether a transaction is supply of goods or supply of services, using the terms whether or not for consideration does not make any sense, because these wordings are very well incorporated in Schedule 1 with respect to deemed supply, or you may call it as supply without consideration. They are very well incorporated in Schedule 1, which has the scope of telling something as supply which is not in fact supply, deemed supply, supply without consideration. So, the wordings whether or not for consideration are of no use in Schedule 2 for a very simple logic, or a simple reason that Schedule 2 scope is only to tell whether a transaction is supply of goods or supply of services. It cannot tell whether a transaction is supply or not. Schedule 2 cannot define supply, or cannot call a transaction as supply. When it cannot call a transaction as supply, it can only clarify whether it is supply of goods or supply of services, but it cannot tell whether a transaction is supply. The usage of these kind of words, whether or not for consideration, does not make any sense, because that is the subject matter of actual supply or deemed supply as per Schedule 1, which is otherwise called as supply without consideration. Now, if you see the author's comment, what is mentioned? The above amendment is only clarificatory in nature. It does not changes any concept per se. When these wordings were there, the answer were the same. When these wordings are removed, the answer remains the same. Now, when these wordings are removed, they are clarifying the fact that Schedule 2 scope is restricted to clarify a transaction whether it is supply of goods or supply of services. Schedule 2 scope is not to tell whether a transaction is supply or not. So, this is only clarificatory in nature. Only if it is a supply as per your section 7.1 or only if it is a supply as per section 7.1, only then section 7.1 capital A read along with Schedule 2 can tell whether it is supply of goods or supply of services. Thus, having the wordings whether or not for consideration does not make any sense in Schedule 2. Having the wordings whether or not for consideration did not make any sense in your Schedule 2. So, first the transaction should be supply, whether actual supply or deemed supply in terms of Schedule 1, which is otherwise called as supply without consideration. So, it should be supply as per section 7.1, section 7 subsection 1. Then the scope of Schedule 2, which is read along with section 7.1 capital A, it will tell whether it is supply of goods or supply of services. So, these wordings whether or not for consideration in Schedule 2 did not make any sense. These wordings actually did not make any sense in Schedule 2, therefore they have been omitted. Right? These are only clarificatory nature. Next, friends, you are talking about the exemption in your composition scheme, which is given in your study revised crack material in the chapter called as small dealers, where we are talking about exemption scheme and composition scheme. So, when you talk about composition scheme, composition scheme are of two types: normal composition scheme, special composition scheme. Friends, our discussion is now restricted to normal composition scheme in terms of section 10.1 read along with section 10.2. So, we are focusing on normal composition scheme. There are two composition scheme: normal composition scheme, which is basically for a manufacturer of goods, a trader of goods, and restaurant outdoor catering services. For other services, you have special composition scheme, section 7.2a. You have special composition section 10.2a. Our focus entirely is now on your normal composition scheme, section 10.1 read along with section 10.2. Now, friends, when you talk about normal composition scheme, the conditions for entering in normal composition scheme is given in section 10.2. Now, there was some mismatch between the conditions of normal composition scheme and special composition scheme. To put in a very simple language, the conditions for entering inside composition scheme, whether it is normal composition scheme in terms of section 10.1 or special composition scheme in terms of section 10.2 capital A, the conditions were the same. With the small differences which are now rectified. Now, what are those differences? Now, when you talk about special composition scheme, if at all you are having non-taxable supply of goods or services, you cannot enter inside it. Now, the same type of wordings are given for normal composition scheme. So, if you are having any supply of goods or services which are not leviable to tax, that is non-taxable, supply, then you are not eligible for normal composition scheme. What is added is the term services. Previously, the term services was missing in your normal composition scheme. It was there in special composition scheme. It was missing in normal composition scheme. They have added, because even in normal composition scheme, though you are talking about a manufacturer or a trader or a restaurant or outdoor catering, there can be small service element also. Even if you are a manufacturer or trader, there can be small service element also. If you are restaurant or outdoor caterer services, there can be small other services also. Small element can be there. So here they have added the word services. In another instance, again the same kind of language they have added. If you are told you are under composition scheme, you cannot make interstate outward supply, whether of goods or services. This services was missing in normal composition scheme, which they have added. Now, one more point is that if at all you are supplying goods or services through ECO, where TCS is applicable, you cannot go for composition scheme. If there is a supply through electronic commerce operator where TCS is applicable under section 52, you cannot go for special composition scheme and normal composition scheme. Previously in normal composition scheme they have added only the word goods. Now they have included services as well. To put it in a very simple way, so if you are talking about normal composition scheme, special composition scheme, right? When you talk about special composition scheme, if you are having non-taxable supply of goods or services which are not leviable to GST, it was that. Now in normal composition scheme, what was there was only supply of goods not leviable to GST. Now what has happened is they have added also the term services. Right. Now the conditions are exactly the same for your normal composition scheme as well as special composition scheme. Next, if you are talking about interstate supply, for special composition scheme, if you are having interstate outward supply of goods or services, you are not eligible for special composition scheme. Whereas in normal composition scheme they have used the wordings, only interstate outward supply of goods. Now friends, they have added the wording services also. So if you are having interstate outward supply of goods or services, both, now it is exactly the same in normal composition scheme as well as special composition scheme. You cannot go for both. I am talking about ineligible. You are not eligible for normal composition scheme as well as special composition scheme. Here also you are not eligible for normal composition scheme as well as special composition scheme. Now third was a scenario where in special composition scheme you had the wordings supply of goods or services through ECO, where TCS is applicable. Whereas for normal composition scheme they had the wording supply of only goods, service was missing, supply of only goods through ECO, where TCS is applicable as per section 52. Now what they have done, they have added the wording services. So if you look at all these 3 points, understand, if at all you are covered here, you cannot go for composition scheme. Now these conditions are exactly the same for normal composition scheme as well as special composition scheme. You need not even differentiate it. Now if you look at the conditions, you will clearly understand that whether you are talking about the goods or services which are not leviable to GST. So both goods as well as services is there which are not leviable to GST. If at all you are supplying goods or services not leviable to GST, you cannot enter inside normal composition scheme as well as special composition scheme. Or if you are talking about interstate outward supply, not inward supply, interstate outward supply of goods as well as services, both in normal composition scheme as well as special composition scheme. If at all you are having interstate outward supply of goods or of services, you cannot think of normal composition scheme as well as special composition scheme. If at all you are talking about supply of goods or services through ECO, where TCS is applicable, that is section 52 is that. So whether you talk about normal composition scheme or special composition scheme, if at all you are supplying goods or services, if at all you are supplying goods or services through ECO where TCS is applicable, TCS should be applicable. Through ECO where TCS is applicable, you cannot think of both normal composition scheme as well as special composition scheme. Now these conditions which are slightly different in these two, normal composition scheme as well as special composition scheme, they have been made exactly the same. They have been made exactly the same. Right, these differences have been now removed. Right, that is all about the amendment which is there in your normal composition scheme. That there were differences in certain conditions when you talk about normal composition scheme section 10.1, 10.2 and special composition scheme section 10.2a. Now those differences have been changed. So 3 points were there where in your normal composition scheme they were focusing only on goods, but in special composition scheme they were focusing both on goods and services. But they realized that in normal composition scheme you can have a small portion of services also. So now for those three cases, whether you talk about normal composition scheme or you talk about special composition scheme, they have included both goods and services for eligibility criteria. Right, so that is the amendment. Now friends, we are talking about the amendment in a very important chapter called as input tax credit. We are talking about your input tax credit. Now the first amendment is with respect to the time limit with respect to your debit note. So you are talking about amendment in section 16 of your CGST Act, where you are talking about the time limit for availing ITC. Friends, you have a lot of conditions for taking input tax credit. To be very precise, there are 11 conditions for you to take your input tax credit. Now when you are talking about the 11 conditions for you to take your input tax credit, one of the condition is the time limit. One of the condition is time limit. Now the time limit for taking your input tax credit happens to be due date of filing your return under section 39 for September of next financial year, compare with actual date of filing of your annual return of that financial year, whichever is earlier. Right, but when you talk about time limit, the time limit was there for invoice. Now when you talk about debit note, time limit with respect to debit note was dependent on invoice, not the debit note. Now to make you understand that, let us take a scenario. Let us take a scenario where invoice was raised in financial year 2021-22. To be very specific, let us assume that the invoice was there in the month of say October 2021. Now pertaining to this invoice, there is a debit note. Debit note which is otherwise called as supplementary invoice, increase in value or increase in tax. So debit note, friends, is raised in the month of say June 2022. Invoice is raised in the month of October 2021 and debit note is in the month of June 2022. Understand friends, October 2021 comes in financial year 2021-22 and debit note is in June 2022, that is financial year 2022-23. Now what is the time limit? What is the time limit? The time limit for taking the credit. The time limit for taking the credit for this invoice, there is no change in invoice by the way. For the time limit for taking the credit for this invoice is due date of your September return. Due date of your September 2022 return. Compare it with actual date of annual return. Actual date of annual return of that financial year 2021-22. Due date of section 39 return, that is due date of section 39 return, that is monthly return or quarterly return. Due date of section 39 return of September 2022, which means after the year is over you get 6 months time. Due date, not the actual date. Here it is due date. Due date of section 39 return of September 2022, which means after the year is over, 6 months, September 2022, compare it with actual date of annual return of which year? The same year, that is financial year 21-22. Whichever is earlier. Understand that previously, even for the debit note which is raised, in June 2022, that is next financial year, time limit was not new. This invoice time limit was applicable. So before the amendment, the time limit for taking the credit even of the tax portion of debit note, before the amendment, time limit for taking the credit even for the tax portion on debit note was the same, was that dependent on invoice. It was actually dependent on the time limit for invoice. So whatever was the time limit for invoice, it was applicable for tax portion on invoice as well as tax portion on debit note. But it may highly happen that invoice is in one financial year and debit note is in next financial year. So for invoice you are getting sufficient time, but for debit note you are not getting much time. Because understand this point, debit note is there in the raise in the month of June 2022, but you have to take the credit on or before due date of September 2022, section 39 return, or actual date of annual return of financial year 21-22, which was earlier. So there you had a problem, you had a very less time limit for taking the credit for debit note. Now after the amendment, they have made it quite logical. They have said that okay, we are not giving sufficient time for you to take the credit based on debit note, that is supplementary invoice. So after the amendment, they are telling that okay, when debit note is raised in a new financial year, you should be getting an extra time limit. Now that extra time limit is financial year 22-23. So due date of section 39 return of September 2023. After that financial year is over, that is 2022-23 is over, September month, 6 extra month, due date of section 39 return of September 2023, compare it with actual date of annual return of financial year 2022-23. So now, whichever is earlier, now you are getting an extra time. So here, now your answer becomes due date of section 39 return, not of September 22, it is September 2023. So when you are talking about taking the credit on the basis of debit note, you have to see only the date when the debit note was raised. You need not see, okay, this is the debit note, this is supplementary invoice, let me see the original invoice, and time limit will be decided by original invoice even for the tax amount of debit note. So they have said that though debit note is dependent on invoice, time limit should be separately given for debit note. There should be extra time limit for tax portion on debit note for the recipient to take the credit. So for the recipient to take the credit, when debit note is raised in June 2022, it is financial year 22-23. So time limit for the recipient to take the credit is due date of section 39 return of September 2023. After that financial year, that is financial year 2022-23 is over, September 2023 return, monthly or quarterly return, due date of section 39 return of September 2023, compare it with actual date of annual return of financial year 22-23, whichever is earlier. Now earlier you are getting a lesser time, now you are getting more time. Before the amendment, you are getting very lesser time. So friends, the discussion is all about debit note. There is no change in time limit for tax taking credit on the basis of invoice. The change is on the basis of changes for time limit for taking the credit on the basis of supplementary invoice or debit note. Debit note is otherwise called as supplementary tax invoice. So before the amendment, if you wanted to take the credit on the basis of debit note, you had a very lesser time limit. Even for taking the credit of the tax portion on debit note, you had to see the invoice corresponding to the debit note, and that would decide the time limit, which means you had a lesser time. It was due date of section 39 return of financial of September 2022 or actual date of annual return of financial year 21-22, if at all it was before the amendment. So for June 2022 you had this lesser time. Now after the amendment you have more time. After the amendment You only see the month or date in which debit note is raised. You do not connect it or you do not link it with invoice. You do not link it with invoice. You don't see the invoice thing. Before the amendment, you saw what was important for debit note was the time in which invoice was raised. Depending on that, time limit was decided even for debit note. Now after the amendment, you have more time for taking the credit on the basis of debit note, because whenever debit note is raised, based on that date, you decide the time limit. So debit note is raised in June 2022, that is financial year 22-23. So time limit is due date of section 39 return of September 2023. September 2022 now becomes September 2023, or actual date of annual return of financial year 2022-23. Earlier it was 21-22, now it is 22-23. Now this difference will be there only in a scenario. It will make a difference or it will have an impact only when invoice is in 1 year and debit note is in another financial year. So that is this amendment. So that is the amendment with respect to time limit for taking the credit on the basis of debit note that we have discussed in terms of section 16. Now another amendment is there in another condition. Totally for taking the credit, you have totally 11 conditions for you to take the credit, out of which one of the condition is time limit, and the amendment therein with respect to time limit for taking the credit on the basis of debit note we have discussed. Now second amendment is with respect to another condition of taking the credit, but now friends, the focus happens to be on one of the main condition, rather the 11th condition, which we call it as Rule 36.4. Rule 36.4. We are talking about Rule 36.4. Now Rule 36.4 tells that a recipient can take the credit only to the extent of what is appearing in his GSTR 2A, now we are going to call it as 2B, on the due date of filing your GS, on the due date of filing of GSTR 1 by the supplier, whatever is available in GSTR 2A plus 10%. Now what are all the changes? I'll just tell the background so that it is very easy to understand the amendment. As a recipient, I can take the credit only if my supplier has filed his outward supplies in his GSTR 1, and his outward supplies that he is filing in his GSTR 1 will come in my GSTR 2A, and on that basis I'll take that as a basis plus some percentage I'll take the credit. So maximum credit that I can take is credit as per my books or my GSTR 2A plus some percentage, whichever is lower. So maximum credit that I can avail in my GSTR 3B. Maximum credit that I can avail in my GSTR 3B is whatever credit is appearing in my GSTR 2A, now you have to read it as 2B, why you will understand, plus a percentage which was earlier 10%, now it is 5%, or eligible ITC as per books, whichever is lower. So this was there before also, but there are some changes. So what are they trying to tell? They are telling that supplier has to file, supplier is required to file his return called as GSTR 1 for his outward supplies. For his outward supplies, supplier will file GSTR 1, and whatever supplier is filing, inward supply details recipient will get in GSTR 2A, now also in 2B, right. Recipient need not see its individual supplier wise, recipient will see on consolidated basis. Recipient will see on consolidated basis, not supplier wise. He is not going to see supplier by supplier, he is going to see all the suppliers put together consolidated basis. Now recipient takes his credit. Recipient will take on input on inward supplies, recipient is going to take input tax credit. So they have said that when recipient is taking his input tax credit in GSTR 3B, which is the main return for him to take the credit, what credit he can take? He can take credit to the extent of whatever ITC is available in books, ITC as per books, ITC as per books. So when recipient is taking input tax credit, in his GSTR 3B, it is ITC as per books or ITC as per automated GSTR 2B, which he is going to get, plus extra 5%, notional 5%, whichever is lower. So recipient is said that you take your credit, and credit is always taken in GSTR 3B. but there's a limit for that. What is the limit that they have said? Whatever your ITC is there as per books, or compare it with ITC which is there as per GSTR 2B plus an extra 5% whichever is lower. Now this is all after amendment. Now what is the actual amendment? Now previously, now I'll just highlight the amendments. Previously supplier used to file, I'm going to write these amendments in light blue shade. Previously supplier used to file only GSTR 1. Now supplier who is going for QRMP scheme, this will be discussing the amendment in your return filing chapter. QRMP scheme is quarterly return, monthly filing. Now supplier will either file GSTR 1 or invoice furnishing facility. Supplier will either file GSTR 1 or invoice furnishing facility. So now this GSTR 1 is either GSTR 1 or invoice furnishing facility. Invoice furnishing facility. So earlier it was only based on GSTR 1. Now supplier will either file GSTR 1 or invoice furnishing facility. Now second amendment. Now when you talk about supplier, they said supplier uploading. They have used a language where they have said where supplier uploads. Previously they used the word supplier should upload. Previously supplier should upload. Now they said that uploading is not sufficient. Supplier should furnish. There's a difference in upload and furnish. Uploading is possible real time. Furnish means he has actually filed his GSTR 1 or IFF, he cannot make any changes. Uploading means he can make the changes. So the first amendment that they have said is supplier now has an option to file GSTR 1 or if he is under QRMP scheme. If he is under QRMP scheme, he may file for the first 2 months of the quarter IFF, invoice furnishing facility. GSTR 1 will be filed by a person who is under MRMP scheme. MRMP is monthly return, monthly payment. Also under QRMP scheme for the third month. For the third month of the quarter. For the first 2 months it is IFF. For the third month of the quarter it is GSTR 1. Assuming that I am under quarterly return, monthly payment scheme, QRMP scheme. For the first 2 months of the quarter I will file invoice furnishing facility. For the last month I will file GSTR 1. If I am under MRMP scheme, normal scheme, monthly return, monthly payment, I will file only GSTR 1 for all the months, whether it is first month or second month or third month of the quarter. So now supplier has an option to file GSTR 1 or IFF. So they understood that and they have said that GSTR 1 or IFF. Previously there was a point where supplier uploads his outward supplies was sufficient. Now government has said that no, uploading is not sufficient because uploading is not finalization. Supplier may upload but he may not file his return or he may not furnish his GSTR 1. So now they have said that no, you have supplier has to furnish. Supplier has to furnish, not upload. Supplier has to furnish. That is the second amendment. Now previously recipient, whatever supplier files in his GSTR 1, now it is even GSTR 1 or IFF, recipient will get in GSTR 2A. Now also recipient will get it in GSTR 2A, but in addition to that, recipient will also get the transaction in GSTR 2B. So now recipient will get the transaction in two returns, two automated returns, GSTR 2A, 2B. But for taking this input tax credit, you have to focus on GSTR 2B because GSTR 2B is static. It will remain, it will give the same answer. It is static. So as on the due date of filing of GSTR 1 or IFF by the supplier, whatever is, supposing the due date for filing GSTR 1 or IFF by the supplier is 13th of next month. See, 2A will keep on changing. 2A is dynamic. It will keep on changing. But this rule 36(4) said that you have to download 2A as on the due date of filing of GSTR 1 by the supplier, which means you have to download 2A on 13th of the next month. If you download on 15th, then 2A will show the transactions of all outward supplies of all the suppliers till they are filed on 15th. So it keeps on changing. 2A will keep on changing. It is dynamic. But law said that you are required to download GSTR 2A on 13th as on the due date of filing GSTR 1 by the supplier, and based on that you have to take your ITC. The difficulty was not everyone was able to download GSTR 2A on 13th or on 14th morning. It was not possible. Supposing if a person is downloading his inward supplies, that is GSTR 2A on 16th, whatever input tax credit is there or whatever inward supply is there till 16th he will get. So government said that no, you can take input tax credit only for those inward supplies which have been reflected on GSTR 2A as on 13th of next month, but I have downloaded on 16th. I'll get transactions what of all the transactions filed by the suppliers till 16th. I don't have an option to go back. So even if I want, I cannot see what were the inward supplies filed by the suppliers till 13th. So government understood there's a problem. So government said that okay, no problem. 2A will continue. We'll introduce a new automated inward supplies details, which is GSTR2B. So when I am talking about GSTR2B, it will show all the transactions of a month which are filed by the suppliers till their due date. So if you're talking about June month, till 13th of July, whatever outward supplies have been filed by the suppliers in the GSTR1 or IFF, I'll get in the recipient will get in GSTR2B. This GSTR2B can be downloaded by recipient on 13th or 14th or 15th or 16th or 17th or 18th or 19th. That will give you the same result. So whether you download on 13th night or 14th morning or 15th or 16th or 17th or 18th, it will give you the same details. Those suppliers who have filed their outward supplies till their due date of filing GSTR1 and IFF, only those will be reflected in GSTR2B. So it is static. Whether I download my GSTR2B on 13th of the next month or 14th of the next month or 15th or 16th or 17th or 18th or 19th or 20th, whatever is there in GSTR2B will remain the same. Now what is there in GSTR2B? GSTR2B will give the inward supplies corresponding to those suppliers who have filed their GSTR1 or IFF as on their due date. So whatever, if those suppliers have filed their GSTR1 or IFF on their due date, on or before the due date, recipient will get that in GSTR2B. If at all it is filed after due date, recipient will get those transactions GSTR2B of not this month but of the next month. We'll be discussing much about GSTR2A and 2B in detailed analysis when we are discussing the amendments of written filing chapter. As of now, we have just discussed the outline, what is relevant as of now. So I'll just again tell the basics. 2B is static. So whenever I download 2B, I'll get the same data, same result, irrespective of when I'm downloading, after a month, after 2 months, after 2 days, after 3 days. But 2A is dynamic, it keeps changing. Depending on when I'm downloading, it will keep changing the values. Now for condition of taking the credit, condition was recipient should take the credit on the basis of outward supplies filed by the supplier as on the due date of filing GSTR1 and IFF. So if recipient is downloading on a particular day, it will give a different result. Another day it will give different result if I go with GSTR2A. But now government has launched GSTR2B. Irrespective of when recipient is downloading his GSTR2B, it will give the same result. That result will be all those outward supplies filed by the supplier as on the due date of their GSTR1 or IFF, as the case may be. That is this next amendment. Now another amendment. Previously, what was the ITC that recipient can take is in his GSTR3B? It was ITC as per books or ITC as per GSTR2A plus 10%. Now they have said that it is ITC as per books or ITC as per eligible ITC as per GSTR2B plus that ad hoc percentage that they have given us lesser. Now it is 5%, whichever is lower. Now they have said that for taking the credit, don't rely on 2A, rely on 2B. So what is the fourth amendment they have brought? They have said that for taking the credit in your GSTR3B, compare your ITC, eligible ITC as per books, compare it with eligible ITC as per GSTR2B, not 2A now, it is as per 2B. Now previously it was plus 10%, ad hoc percentage, extra percentage that you can take is extra cushion that they gave us 10%. Now they have reduced that cushion, which is 5%, So now the formula is ITC as per books or ITC as per eligible ITC as per GSTR2B plus 5%, whichever is lower. Now these are the amendments that have been brought out. What are the amendments? Previously, supplier used to file GSTR1, which used to come in GSTR2A. Now supplier may file as GSTR1 or invoice furnishing facility, and both will be reflected in GSTR2A as well as 2B. But there is a difference between 2 and 2B, which we will discuss in written filing chapter. Previously, the rule 36(4) used the language supplier has to upload their outward supplies in their GSTR1. Now they have said that uploading is not required. What is required is the supplier has to furnish. Furnish means finalization is there. Furnish their outward supplies. Not only in GSTR1, it can be by way of invoice furnishing facility as well. That is the second amendment. Third amendment, previously the focus was on GST at 2A, now the focus is on GST at 2B, which is static, which is same. Irrespective of when you download, it will give you the same data, GST at 2B. Now the basis of taking the credit is GST at 2B, not GST at 2A, which keeps on changing. Previously, when you're talking about the credit that recipient is taking in is GST at 3B, that is, this is a finalized summary return. It was ITC, eligible ITC as per books or eligible ITC as per GST at 2A plus 10%, which was lower. Now it is eligible ITC as per books or eligible ITC as per GST at 2B plus 10, 2A has become 2B plus 10% has become 5%, whichever is lower. So these are all the amendments that have been brought in Rule 36 Sub-Rule, Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4. All these amendments that are there, we have discussed, all these amendments. Right. Now friends, there is another amendment in your ITC chapter, or you can even take it to your payment chapter, either ways, because it is all about utilization of credit. Last time they have introduced or they have brought out Rule 86A. Now this time they have introduced or they have brought out Rule 86B. Restriction on utilization of credit. Restriction on utilization of credit, which you can expect in this exams for sure. When you're talking about a practical question, you can expect here. Even the previous point, Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4, that was also a question, amendment with respect to your practical questions. Now this is also an amendment with respect to your practical question. Restriction on your utilization of ITC as per Rule 86B, which means when you're making the payment, first you'll use your credit, then you'll pay it by cash ledger. So whenever you're making the payment, first you use your electronic credit ledger. If at all balance is required, you will use your electronic cash ledger. If at all balance is required, you will use your electronic cash ledger. Now they have said that minimum something you have to pay by cash ledger. At least 1% you have to pay by cash ledger. At least 1% of your liability you have to pay by your cash ledger. Now what have they said? Notwithstanding anything contained in these rules, the registered person shall not use the amount available in electronic credit ledger to discharge the liability towards outward tax in excess of 99% of such tax liability. Till 99% of that liability you can use credit ledger, but 1% you have to pay it by cash ledger. Now friends, is it applicable for all? No, it is applicable only for those persons whose value of taxable supply other than exempt supply and zero rated supply, value of taxable supply, ignore exempt supply and zero rated supply, it should be more than 50 lakhs in a month. Now first thing you have to understand, whether all the assessees are covered with this Rule 86B, no. Only if your value of taxable supply in a month is more than 50 lakhs. Now when you are calculating value of taxable supply, please include only taxable supply, do not count exempt supply and zero rate supply. Only if it is more than 50 lakhs, only then you are covered. Now let us see example by example to understand its application. Let us focus on example number 2 for understanding the point that we have discussed. Applicability of Rule 86B in July 2022 month. A registered person, first we will see the other points. First we will see this particular thing. What is the value of taxable supply? 30 lakhs. Exempt supply 50 lakhs. Zero rated supply 150 lakhs. So total value of supply that he has made in a particular month, we are talking about July month, July 2022, is 230 lakhs. But here you are going to take only value of taxable supply. You are not going to count. Value of exempt supply and value of zero rated supply. So it is only 30 lakhs. Therefore, friends, your Rule 86B is not applicable in July month. So you have to check month on month. Right. Now, supposing in August month, your value of taxable supply is 60 lakhs. Exempt supply 30 lakhs. Zero rated supply, that is exports and supplies to special economic zone, 90 lakhs. So if you total your value, it is 180 lakhs. But you are not going to count value of exempt supply and zero rated supply. You are going to count only value of the basic taxable supply, which is 60 lakhs. Now, if you look at this particular example, you will clearly find that the value of taxable supply, ignoring, not counting or ignoring ignoring your exempt supply, ignoring your exempt supply and zero rated supply is actually more than 50 lakhs. Therefore 86B is applicable. How it is applicable, how you have to apply, we will see. 86B is applicable. So when you are checking, first see whether in a particular month your value of taxable supply without counting exempt supply and zero rated supply, is it more than 50 lakhs? If so, in that month it is applicable. In that month it is applicable. Now there is an exception for this rule. First is monthly basis, you have to see. Now there is an exception in this rule which tells that this restriction shall not apply. It shall not apply to whom? It shall not apply if at all you are talking about the said person or the proprietor or the karta or the managing director or two partners, any of the two partners or two whole time directors or members of managing committee of association or board of trustees. That is, two partners or two whole time directors or two members of managing committee of association or two board of trustees. They have paid income tax more than 1 lakh. They have paid income tax more than 1 lakh in each of the last 2 financial years, for which your IT return due date has expired as per section 139 of your IT Act. Your IT return due date should have been expired. Your IT return due date should have been expired. That is, it is depending on your IT liability. We will understand this again with the help of example. Or a registered person who has received a refund of more than 1 lakh in preceding financial year, only one financial year, preceding financial year, on account of unutilized ITC, whether in terms of zero rated supply. See, you can get the refund of ITC only in 2 cases: zero rated supply or inverted duty structure. So you have got a refund, of more than 1 lakh in which year? In preceding financial year. And when you are getting the refund of your credit, it is either on account of zero rated supply or on account of inverted duty structure. Right, that is the point there. Now another category, we are not seeing this C point, we are seeing A point, we are seeing B point, now we are seeing D point. What is the D point? The registered person happens to be government department or public sector undertaking, a local authority or a statutory body. If we are talking about a government department or a statutory body or a local authority, a government department or local authority or public sector undertaking or a statutory body, this rule 86B is not applicable. It is also not applicable if commissioner or any authorized officer have removed this restriction. So you have made a request to commissioner or any authorized officer suggest and requesting that you don't have proper working capital, you have to manage your working capital. So you make a request or permission to commissioner or any authorized officer, and he has removed the said restriction after such verification. So you may get relaxation from commissioner or authorized officer. You may get relaxation. You are covered, but you may get relaxation. You are covered, but you may get relaxation. Now, which point we have not discussed is this 1% point again. This will discuss later. Now, first let us understand the other points. Let us understand the other points. Now, what are the other points? If at all the registered person happens to be government department or local authority or public sector undertaking or statutory body, forget about rule 86B. If the registered person, you have to see in the sequence, the section, the rule tells in a different sequence, logical sequence is this. First see whether the registered person is government department or a local authority or a statutory body or public sector undertaking. Not applicable. If at all that is not covered, then analyze whether you are covered by this, whether you have got refund of ITC on account of inverted duty structure or zero rate supply, which is more than 1 lakh in previous financial year, only last year. You have got refund of ITC, input tax credit. Refund of ITC is only in 2 cases: inverted duty structure or zero rate supply. Zero rate supply is nothing but export of goods or services or supply of goods or services to special economic zone. Inverted duty structure is nothing but the rate of tax on your inputs is higher than the rate of tax on your outward supply. Right, so you have got the refund of ITC more than 1 lakh in previous financial year, not applicable. Not applicable for the entire year. Not applicable for the entire year. Right. If your government department, statutory body, local authority or public sector undertaking, not applicable forever. If at all your previous year refund of ITC is more than 1 lakh, not applicable. This rule 86B is not applicable for the current financial year. Now, if at all income tax is there, income tax payment is more than 1 lakh in not last financial year, it is last 2 financial year, for which IT return due date has expired. You cannot take normal 2 financial years, last 2 financial years for which IT return due date have expired. Now for whom? At this point you have to be very cautious. First of all, it is not normal last 2 financial years. It is not normal last 2 financial years. Right? You are talking about supposing you are in the month of April 2021. So when you are talking about last 2 financial years, which are the financial years you are going to take? Normally, if I tell last 2 financial years, you will go by which all financial years? Normal scenario. Normal scenario, you would have gone by financial year 2020-21 and financial year 2019-20. But here it is not so, because as on April 2021. As on April 2021, your due date of IT return for financial year 2021 is yet to come. Your financial year, you have to file your IT return for financial year 2021, which will come in the month of July for non-audit cases or September, October for audit cases. So your due date is yet to come. So now last 2 financial years will be financial year 2019-20, financial year 2018-19. Friends, you are standing in financial year 21-22. You are standing in financial year 21-22, but your last 2 financial years are not 2021 and 19-20. They are 19-20 and 18-19. Why? As on April 2021, the due date of your IT return for financial year 2021 is yet to come. Now, if I change the example and if I tell that you are standing in the month of January 2022. January 2022 is also covered in financial year, it's also covered by financial year 2021-22. Whether you talk about April 21 or Jan 22, both are covered in the same financial year. Now understand that when you are standing in January 2022, your due date for filing IT return for the last financial year, that is 2021, is over. It is already gone. Now in that case, last 2 financial year is financial year 2020-21, because due date of IT return for 2021 would have gone, and financial year 19-20 and financial year 19-20. Why? Now obviously the exact, just preceding previous financial year is 2021, and for previous financial year 2021, due date of IT return has already gone when you are standing in the month of Jan. When you are standing in the month of January 2022, due date of that IT return has already gone. So now you are going to take the base as financial year 2021, which is the previous financial year, and a year before that, financial year 19-20. So this you have to understand. This point you have to see when you are talking about income tax condition, income tax payment condition, income tax more than 1 lakh. Now income tax more than 1 lakh for whom? Friends, either you will be talking about your sole proprietorship concern, or it will be a partnership firm, LLP. For GST, partnership firm, LLP will come together, or it will be a company, or it will be a association of persons, or you are talking about trust. Now if at all it is a sole proprietorship concern, you are talking about the individuals, income tax paid by individual, income tax paid by the individual or sole proprietor, income tax paid by the sole proprietor, who is nothing but the individual. If at all it is a partnership firm, any of its 2 partners, rather, to be very precise, if at all it is a partnership firm or LLP, either partnership firm or LLP, or any of the 2 partners, either the firm itself or 2 partners, they should have paid income tax more than 1 lakh. If it is a company, either the company or its managing director or any of the 2 whole-time directors, or which means anything is possible. So either the company has paid income tax more than 1 lakh in last 2 years for which IT due date is expired, or its managing director or 2 whole-time directors. If it is association of persons, either the association of persons or 2 of the members of managing committee, of association of persons. Either or means either the AOP has paid income tax more than 1 lakh in last 2 years, or Two of the members of managing committee of association of persons has paid income tax more than 1 lakh in last 2 years for which IT due date has expired. If it is trust, either the trust or two of board of trustees, either the trust has paid more than 1 lakh income tax or two of the board of trustees have paid more than 1 lakh income tax in the last 2 years for which the due date of IT return has expired. So either or. So here you are talking about IT income tax more than 1 lakhs, income tax more than 1 lakh in 2 years, last 2 years for which your IT return due date has expired, right? So this is how you have to understand. So when you talk about income tax payment, it is more than 1 lakh last 2 years, but not last 2 years just like that, last 2 years for which IT return due date has expired. When you talk about refund of ITC, it is only 1 year, only previous, just before previous financial year, and that too you have to see, you have got refund of more than 1 lakh, right? So this point we have discussed. Rather, even one more point was left out, which are not discussed. There can be even Karta, HUF. So when you're talking about HUF, either the HUF or Karta. We have missed out this point. Either the HUF or its Karta. Right. So we have discussed this point. So when you talk about refund of ITC, it is more than 1 lakh and just a normal previous financial year. But if it is about income tax payment, it is more than 1 lakh. Now it is not 1 year, it is last 2 financial years and not normal financial years for which the due date of IT return has expired. Now by whom also is complicated. If it is sole proprietorship concern, it is proprietor. If it is HUF, either HUF or its Karta. If it is partnership firm LLP, either partnership firm or any of its 2 partners. If it is company, either company or managing director or 2 whole-time directors. If it is association, either association of persons or 2 members of managing committee of AOP. If it is trust, either trust or 2 of the board of trustees, right? If at all you are not covered any above, if you are not covered above, then friends 86B will be applicable. If you are not covered above, then 86B will be applicable. So if you see, we have seen application of 86B by way of example 1, 2 and 3. Friends, there is one more point that was there. What was that one more point? 86B is not applicable in a month if at all cumulatively, this point is very, very interesting. If cumulatively that registered person has already discharged output tax by electronic cash ledger, which is more than 1% of the total output tax liability, cumulatively up to that month. Now to understand this, let us take an example. Now, supposing you are in the month of September 2022. Now, value of taxable supplies, 40 lakhs, exempt supply 60 lakhs, zero rated supply 120 lakhs, Now, we are not going to count your exempt supply and zero rated supply, you are going to count only taxable supply. It is 40 lakhs. If it is 40 lakhs, very clearly 86B is not applicable. In the next example, supposing you jump to the month of October. Value of taxable supply 75 lakhs, exempt supply 60 lakhs, zero rated supply 130 lakhs. So you are not going to count exempt supply and zero rated supply, you are going to count only taxable supply. Prima facie 86B should be applicable. So if you look at example 3 and example 5, they are exactly the same. August and October monthly taxable supplies value is more than 50 lakhs. Prima facie it should be applicable. But why it is not applicable in the month of August? In August, registered person have already discharged output tax through electronic cash ledger less than 1% of total output tax. So cumulatively from April 22 to August 22, output tax paid by cash ledger was less than 1%. Therefore, in the month of August it is applicable. But in month of October, cumulatively, that registered person has already paid output tax by electronic cash ledger, which is more than 1% of total output tax cumulatively from April 22 to October 22. Now, prima facie understand that in this month 86P should have been applicable. In October month 86P should have been applicable, but finally it is not applicable. Why? Because in October month, though value of taxable supply is more than 50 lakhs, but already that assessee has already paid. So if you take cumulative figures, already cumulatively right from April to October, this assessee has already paid more than 1% of total output tax by way of cash ledger. That being the case, it is not applicable. Otherwise, it would have been applicable. So 1% you have to see for month, plus also check year beginning till month cumulatively. Now, if you again make a difference in August, just compare this example 3 with example 5. In both the cases, the value of taxable supply in that month is more than 50 lakhs. So, prima facie in both the cases, rule 86B is applicable. But in August month, understand that you have to check even cumulative tax payment. Cumulative tax payment right from April to August 22 was less than 1% of 1% of output tax liability. Supposing output tax liability April 22 to August 22, gross output tax is say 10 lakhs, paid in cash ledger, paid by way of cash ledger. So 1% of 10 lakhs will be 10,000. Paid by cash ledger is only 3,000. Now, these figures are for April to August, cumulative figures. These figures are cumulative figures. So gross output tax is 10 lakhs. Cumulative figures. Gross output tax is 10 lakhs for all April, May, June, July, August together, and paid by cash ledger is only 3,000, very minimum amount. Now, if you see this minimum 1%, it should have been 1% means it should have been 10 lakhs multiplied by 1%. It should have been at least 10,000. But when you compare 3,000 and 10,000, 1% has not been achieved. 1% has not been achieved. Therefore, in August month you have to apply. Therefore, in August month, rule 86B will be applicable. Now, if I change this and I tell that cumulatively from April 22 to October 22, your gross output tax for all these months is 25 lakhs for all these months together. And what you have paid by cash ledger, till from April month to October 2022, you have already paid 30,000 by cash ledger. Now, 25 lakhs multiplied by 1% is equal to 25,000. Now, you have already crossed that 1%. You should have paid 25,000, but you have already paid. You should have paid 25,000, but already till now you have already paid by cash ledger 30,000. Therefore, this 1% is passed. Therefore, rule 86B is not applicable for the month of October. In the previous case, rule 86B was applicable for the month of August because cumulatively 1% was not achieved. So that you have to understand, right? So that is all about your application of rule 86B with respect to concept. Now let us discuss about numbers. Very, very interesting numbers. Let us discuss about numbers. Supposing, and understand that when you are calculating this 1%, RCM will not be counted. RCM is always paid by cash ledger. RCM will not be counted. Now let us take the last example to wind this up to understand this entire 86B. Now output tax output tax in a particular month. Output tax in a particular month, your IGST is 1 lakh, CGST is 5 lakhs and SGST is 5 lakhs. Your input tax credit, excluding RCM input tax credit, your input tax credit is how much? Your input tax credit is 4,98,000 CGST and 10,02,000 SGST. That is your input tax credit. Totally 15 lakhs. Your RCM is 2 lakhs. CGST 1 lakh, SGST 1 lakh, 2 lakhs, which you will pay by cash. You will get the credit. Now understand that if Rule 86B is applicable, if I tell that your Rule 86B is applicable, what are you going to do? If Rule 86B is applicable, your output tax is 1 lakh, 5 lakh and 5 lakh, totally 11 lakhs, which you have to pay. Right? Understand that when you have to pay minimum 1% by cash ledger. So minimum 1% of 11 lakhs is 11,000. 1% you have to pay it by way of cash ledger. So first you decide. Here normally you don't have total column, but here you have total column. Normally you don't have total column, but in this case please make sure that you have total column. So minimum 1% of 11 lakhs, that is 11,000 you have to pay by cash ledger. Now let us see your input tax credit. Now input tax credit, what is your input tax credit? Your input tax credit is CGST 4,98,000, SGST 10,02,000. There is no IGST input tax credit. So when you are talking about a scenario, where you don't have IGST credit, first you will use CGST credit. CGST credit is 4,98,000. So CGST credit you will use it fully, 4,98,000. SGST credit is 10,02,000. SGST credit 10,02,000 is there. You will use 5 lakhs SGST credit for SGST liability and you will use then for IGST liability. But when you are using that, make sure that, understand that 2,000 for sure you have to pay CGST by cash ledger. Now balance 9,000 either pay CGST or either you have to pay IGST or some other tax. You have to pay some tax. So what you can do, you can pay balance 9,000 of your IGST liability. So you have surplus balance of SGST credit. Total credit of SGST is 10,02,000. You have used only 5 lakhs. But balance 5,02,000 you have, but you will be using only 91,000. Let me work out in a different manner, very simple manner. Your IGST, CGST, SGST, output tax was 155. Output tax was 1 lakh, 5 lakh, 5 lakh, total 11 lakhs. Here friends, it is better that you have total column because of 1%, total 11 lakhs. Total it is 11 lakhs less your ITC. First less when you are doing, first you will use IGST input tax credit, then you will use CGST input tax credit, finally you will use SGST input tax credit. Now understand, first let us assume that 86B concept itself is not there. So let us work out in a simple manner. Very simple manner. Assume that there is no 86B. 86B itself is not there. Normal working out how it would have been there. IGST you don't have any credit. So IGST, if there is no credit you cannot do anything. CGST you have credit. CGST how much credit you have? You have 4,98,000. So CGST credit you have 4,98,000, you have to pay 5 lakhs. So CGST credit first will be used for CGST output. So CGST credit first it is used for CGST output. CGST credit itself is 4,98,000. You have used it fully. Right. So balance you don't have, and balance if it was there you can use it for IGST. But CGST credit first should be used for CGST liability. Then if at all balance is there you can use it. So now CGST credit itself available is 4,98,000. There is no balance credit. Right. Now finally you have SGST credit. SGST credit is how much? CGST credit itself was, IGST credit was nothing. CGST credit was 4,98,000 which you have used it fully. SGST credit you have 10,02,000. 10,02,000. SGST credit first will be used for SGST output. So SGST credit will be first used for SGST output. Out of 10,02,000 you will use 5 lakhs for SGST output. Balance you can use it for IGST output. Balance 1 lakh you can use it for IGST output. Balance 1 lakh you can use it for IGST output. Friends, if you work this, you will find that, if you work out this, you will find that this is without application of Rule 86B. You are not applying Rule 86B. You will find that you are not paying anything, you are not paying any IGST by cash ledger. This is a payment in cash ledger. This is payment in cash ledger. You are not paying anything IGST by cash ledger. You are not paying any SGST in cash ledger. You are paying only 2,000. You are paying only 2,000 CGST by cash ledger. Now, what is the balance credit you have? You don't have any leftover CGST credit. You have leftover SGST credit of out of 10,02,000, 6 lakhs is used. So 4,02,000 you have. So 4,02,000 you have. This would have been the workings. I am not taking RCM into picture. This would have been your answer. This is this was the first part. Then you have RCM. Then you have RCM. RCM liability was CGST 1 lakh, SGST 1 lakh, and RCM is always paid by cash ledger. RCM is always paid by cash ledger. So you cannot use the credit. RCM is always paid by cash ledger. So you end up paying CGST 1 lakh by cash ledger, SGST 1 lakh by cash ledger. But this RCM, after you make the payment, you can take the credit. Balance in credit ledger. Balance in credit ledger. So RCM, after you pay, you will take the credit. So balance in credit ledger, friends, would have been 0 in IGST, and CGST you would have 1 lakh in CGST credit. Why? RCM will pay it by cash and you will get in credit ledger. And SGST you will have out of 10,02,000. Out of 10,02,000, you have used 5 lakhs plus 1 lakh, 6 lakhs. That is 4,02,000 plus 1 lakh RCM will be added. So 5,02,000 will be there. This will be carried forward in the next month. This is in a scenario where you don't apply Rule 86B. This is in a scenario where this would have been your normal answer. Now if I tell apply Rule 86B. Now when I apply Rule 86B, minimum 1%. Minimum 1% of 11 lakh is 11,000 should have been paid by cash ledger, excluding RCM. You don't take into account RCM. Now for doing that, what I'll do, there's no IGST credit, so IGST credit will not change. CGST credit is 4,98,000, which I'll use entirely for CGST output. There also I could have made some changes. And SGST credit I have 10,02,000, which 5 lakhs I have used for SGST output. Balance 1 lakh. Instead of using balance 1 lakh for IGST output, I'll use balance only 92,000. Why? Balance only 91,000. Why? Because I have to pay minimum 11,000 by cash ledger. So I'll pay here, end up paying here 9,000 IGST by cash ledger. So 9,000 plus 2,000 will give me 11,000. Now understand that when I am talking about balance 11,000 by cash ledger, it can be in any of this 1% is calculated on wholesome basis. It is not separately for CGST, separately for SGST, separately for IGST. It is on wholesome basis. So when I am talking about this 1% application, 1% is for all together CGST, SGST, IGST. So total output is 11 lakhs, 1% is 11,000. 2,000 you are going to pay anyways CGST. Here also you could have increased CGST. Rather than you could have increased the CGST liability, instead rather than using 4,98,000 entire amount here, you could have used only 4,89,000 here. Here itself 11,000 could have come. So you can make changes accordingly, but within the formula or utilization principles. You should not change the utilization principles. So IGST credit first should be used, then it should be CGST credit, then it should be SGST credit. IGST credit first for IGST output, then for CGST output, SGST output, any ratio, any proportion. CGST credit first for CGST output, then for IGST output, never for SGST output. SGST credit first for SGST output, then for IGST output, never for CGST output. So that principles you have to keep in mind. Right. Now I have to pay more 9,000. So I'll increase the IGST output liability more by 9,000. When I do that, I'll use lesser credit. So rather than using 1 lakh credit of SGST against IGST output, SGST credit against IGST output, I'll use only 91,000 credit of SGST input tax credit against IGST output tax liability, which means I'll end up paying 9,000 by cash ledger. So 9,000 plus 2,000 is 11,000, minimum 1% I am satisfying. Right, so this will change. Now my carry forward will also change. My carry forward, there is no IGST credit, so that will not change. CGST credit will not change, but my SGST credit is used how much? SGST credit is 5 lakh is used and 91,000 is used. 5 lakh 91,000 is used out of 10 lakh 2,000. So when I am talking about 5 lakh 90,000 out of 10 lakh 2,000, that is used. So how much will be the balance portion? 4 lakh 11,000. 4 lakh 11,000. So here if I take out of 10 lakh 2,000, I am subtracting 5 lakh 91,000 is already used. So that will give me how much? Four lakh 11,000. 4 lakh 11,000 plus RCM credit is 1 lakh. So 5 lakh 11,000. Now I am satisfying this 1% criteria, where I am paying minimum 1% of my gross output by cash ledger. When I am paying, you calculating that 1%, it is all together, CGST, SGST, IGST all put together. And now when I am paying more by cash ledger, my carry forward of credit has increased. Earlier my carry forward of credit was 1 lakh CGST and 5 lakh 2,000 SGST. Now my carry forward of credit is 1 lakh CGST and 5 lakh 11,000 SGST and 5 lakh 11,000 SGST. So that is how my workings will change. So this example, what I have done, whatever I have written in violet shade is when I am applying 86B. So all the changes are marked in violet color when I am applying 86B. Now the previous case was when I am not applying 86B. So you will understand the difference. So when I am applying 86B, all these changes will come. First, the changes in your IGST utilization of SGST credit for IGST output utilization credit changed, automatically your IGST payment in cash increased. So automatically 1% is satisfied. When that is done, when you are using less SGST credit for IGST output, SGST carry forward of credit will increase. So these are all the changes that will come when you are applying. These three changes will come when you are applying your 86B. Right. So that is all about your application of rule 86B even for your practical workings. I repeat, when you are applying 86B, do not change the sequence of utilization. Follow the same sequence of utilization. You have to do some trial and error and see whether this 1% is satisfied, whether this 1% rule is satisfied. Right. So that is all about the amendment in your input tax credit chapter.